The Omicron variant of coronavirus has triggered a massive scare across the world and here in India as well. Centre, the state governments, they're all on high alert in view of this variant. The centre has issued guidelines for international travellers from at-risk nations and has made screening mandatory at all airports for flyers coming from these affected nations. A negative RT-PCR test is a must before departure, and a second RT-PCR test on arrival in India has been made mandatory. Let me highlight again that this is for people travelling from the at-risk nations. Passengers will have to mandatorily quarantine for 7 days, after which they will be tested again. For those coming from other countries, sample testing will be done on the travellers. In all cases, if any traveller tests positive, genome sequencing will be conducted to ensure COVID variant. Now, the centre has also decided to review its flight resumption decision amid the Omicron threat. The centre has asked states to enforce intensive containment surveillance measures. States have been asked to be on alert and prepare an action plan in case of any contingency.
India is ramping up COVID fight. Just as daily cases in India dip to less than 10,000 a day, a brand new threat stalks the world. Omicron, a new, more infectious COVID variant with possible vaccine dodging capabilities. Amid looming threat, the centre issued an advisory to states on action plan. The letter from Health Secretary Rajesh Bhushan says states must monitor hotspots, putting international flyers from at-risk nations to screening and 14-day mandatory quarantine. Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal wrote to Prime Minister Modi calling for a ban on flights from countries affected by the new variant.
दिल्ली के तमाम अस्पतालों और तमाम सार्वजनिक स्थलों पर कोविड प्रोटोकॉल को पूरी तरह से पालन करने का सख्त आदेश जो है वो दिया गया है। दिल्ली के राज्यपाल अनिल बैजल की तरफ से अहम बैठक की गई, जिसमें दिल्ली के मुख्य सचिव, पुलिस आयुक्त और तमाम वरिष्ठ अधिकारी भी शामिल हुए और इसके साथ साथ ये फैसला लिया गया कि तमाम जो सार्वजनिक स्थल हैं और बाजार हैं उनमें कोविड नियमों का सख्ती से पालन किया जाए।
In Maharashtra, the Municipal Corporation of Greater Mumbai announced mandatory testing for select international passengers and strict penalty for violators.
जो प्रवासी आ रहे उनको, जो दक्षिण अफ्रीका हो या दूसरे देश से आते कंट्री से, तो उनको जीनोम सीक्वेंसिंग का चेक करना पड़ेगा। उसके बाद जो हमारे देश में आते तो उनको क्वारंटाइन करके वो सब चेकिंग होने के बाद ही छोड़ा जाएगा।
After a brief scare over 2 people testing positive on arrival in Bengaluru, Karnataka has scaled up testing too.
All these tests we have sent to our labs, genomic sequencing labs. We are awaiting those results in another 5 to 6 days. Then I think we'll be able to tell you what kind of a strain is this. But we are definitely concerned with the new Omicron variant.
Chief Minister of Bihar and Madhya Pradesh too chaired meetings to discuss the threat of the new variant.
Madhya Pradesh Chief Minister Shivraj Singh Chauhan today called a meeting at CM residence on new COVID variant. Officers informed the Chief Minister that as of now, there is not a single case of COVID new Omicron variant in Madhya Pradesh, but as a precaution, state government has taken few decisions today in this meeting held by the Chief Minister Shivraj Singh Chauhan.
Will the new variant bring back fresh lockdown and derail the road to recovery? Bureau Report, India Today.
Let me take this across to our Deputy Editor Sneha Murdani for more details on this. Sneha, you know, as we speak, more and more countries are now reporting cases of the Omicron variant. What's being done by the government here to ensure that we can be fully prepared and also to ensure that, you know, there is additional checking of anyone who's coming in from these countries?
Yes, you know, Akshita, the thing here is that I think the approach of the government is that they're presuming, like all other countries are, that there is a big chance that the variant is already in the country. Like the US has also said that there is no detection so far. It's going to take up to 2 weeks or so to see if the variant is actually here. depending on the genomic sequencing done and the time taken to take the samples. But we are going with the presumption that the variant is here. The government is not sort of underscoring that, but I think that's the thought process that we have to sort of then think, because we did open up international travel, there is a big possibility that there will be a detection here, but the infection here, because of the fifth variant of concern, that's already in the country. INSAGOG, which is a consortium of 10 labs in India, that was actually set up during the COVID-19 pandemic, at the beginning of the pandemic, to ensure better genomic sequencing and genomic sequencing of all the samples to understand whether the virus is mutating or not. Already has decided to take at least 5% random samples, and was also decided, of course, the government of India has decided this, that samples of people coming from all the affected countries will be sent for genomic sequencing. So the 12 countries where this has been identified already, that's going to be sent. Let me also tell you this. While we speak about the new variant, there is a school of thought, and that of the World Health Organization itself, that says that right now it makes just no sense to ban international travel. It'll only lead to stigmatization. But will India do it, given that when the Delta variant was first detected in India, countries shut the borders to us as well. Many countries have gone ahead and, banned travelers from these 12 countries where the new variant has been reported. Will India also do it? There is no definitive answer to that, but I can tell you for sure that that option is certainly open. The Prime Minister chaired a review meeting on Saturday, as you know, and this was discussed right there, that if things do go out of hand, that might actually be the only way, that may be the only way forward. But that is not ignoring the fact that there is a chance that even before banning international travel, the variant is here. Only genomic sequencing can actually give a better idea about how far India has been affected so far.
So for all scenarios, the government essentially sending across a message that we're prepared for all scenarios in case the Omicron variant is already in India, to try and ensure that they identify it and isolate it as soon as possible, or to ensure that we're fully prepared so that it doesn't enter India in any circumstances. Neha, thank you for joining us this morning with all those details. Now, with the Omicron threat hanging around the world, India has in fact put forth a slew of guidelines for international travelers. There are 12 nations that have been identified as high-risk nations. Here are the guidelines. Whichever country you're coming in from, a negative RT-PCR test report is a must before departure from the country of origin. Beyond that, if from a high-risk nation, a compulsory RT-PCR test will be done once the person touches down in India as well. So a second RT-PCR test, it will be happening for everyone from the high-risk nations. Beyond that, genome sequencing will be done in case the person tests positive. That is the must and the norm for anyone who tests positive, whether from a high-risk nation or not. Now, there's a mandatory 7-day quarantine for anyone who comes from these high-risk nations. If you're coming from other countries, there's no mandatory quarantine. A third test will be conducted after the 7-day quarantine period for symptoms, and no further tests will be conducted if you're not coming in from one of the nations that has been identified as high risk. So these are the new guidelines that have been issued for international travelers coming into India. 12 nations, as I mentioned, have been identified as high risk, where there have been cases of the Omicron variant. Now, the Omicron variant, there's no confirmed case of it here in India yet, but a passenger who returned from South Africa to Dombivli in Thane district of Maharashtra recently has tested positive for COVID. It's not confirmed whether the patient was carrying the Omicron variant of coronavirus or not. Remember that this variant has been deemed a variant of concern by the WHO. The patient's samples have been sent for genome sequencing to confirm whether or not he is Omicron positive, whether he's a carrier of this new variant. A list of 466 people who arrived at the Mumbai airport between the dates of November 12th to 26th have been identified. These people arrived from nations which have been identified as at risk, from nations where the Omicron variant has been confirmed. Out of the 466 travelers, 97 were from Mumbai. The BMC has contacted all the 97 so far via phone, as well as a physical visit by the BMC staff. They're saying that there's nothing to worry about and there's absolutely no reason to panic as of now.